What is good, friends? Welcome back to another masterclass. You guys voted on this one, so we're doing a modern boom bap tutorial here today. And in terms of what we're going to be covering, we're going to cover everything. VSTs, sampling, how to create samples, what kind of drums you're going to want to use, what kind of effects you're going to want to use, how to arrange your beats, how to mix it. We're covering everything. Don't skip any steps, as there's plenty of steps within here that if you just take out one of these steps and you don't do it, your beat's going to significantly suffer. So just pay close attention and let's get into it. So for these types of beats, you can use samples, create your own samples, and sample those samples, which we're gonna be doing here today. But I thought I'd quickly go over some places to get samples if you just wanna, cheat. I'm just kidding, sampling is not cheating at all. It's like the origins of this style of music. So the first place we've got is good old Splice. Tons of great samples on here of different genres, etc. Next we got Looperman, which has a lot of great samples that you can just go on and download. Then you got sites like Tracklib, which is good, a little bit more expensive if you actually want to use the sample though. You can go on YouTube and just look up, I meant songs to sample, but you can find a bunch of different playlists and stuff like that. Whatever method you end up choosing though, just make sure you look into the usage rights and whatnot. Don't want anyone to blame me if their song gets taken down or gets sued or anything. Now in terms of VSTs, one really great one is Labs by Spitfire Audio. They have tons of different free sounds on here. They have pianos, electric guitars, synth strings, bass guitars, etc. And it actually sounds good, especially for being something that's free. Another really great free plugin is Ample Bass Lite 2. It's like a bassline preset. They also have a guitar VST as well, and for free. Very good. Now let's go into some paid VSTs, and I'm gonna go into effects a little bit later when I actually go and create the sample. A good one, of course, is something like a keyscape. And keyscape is great as you have a mix between, regular acoustic pianos, vintage digital keyboards, hybrid pianos, electric pianos, just really everything that you would want. Another great VST is Trillion, just a bassline VST essentially. Hundreds of different bass lines. Another one that's really great is Arcade, and I'm gonna get into some of the banks later. I thought I'd just mention it right now, just cause I can't do whatever I want right now. Another really cool sounding plugin is Mellotron. It's just got some super vintage sounding sounds. In the event you want something that's affordable, pretty versatile, and works great for these types of beats, and I'm actually going to use it here today, definitely check out my one-shot kit DaVinci. It's got a lot of really good real sounds. I've used it in tons of my tutorials. I think I dropped it 3 or 4 months ago. I still use it multiple times a week, and it's just a really great kit for whatever you're trying to do, so definitely check that out. Overall though, just do whatever you want. Use whatever sounds you want, whatever you think sounds good. You could create your own style of modern boom bap. So for the BPM for these beats, 75 to 90 is a pretty solid range, as it's gonna create a nice little drum bounce when you add your drums. Alright, so now let's get into actually creating your samples. I'm going to show you the sample without any effects first, and then we'll get into the best effects to use. And when I add the effects, it's going to make a huge difference in terms of how it sounds. So the first sound I'm using from DaVinci is this sweet piano right here. So I would just get a nice piano like this to get started. Keep in mind, I'm going to chop this up later, but how it turned out, I could probably just use that and create a beat as well. I just started with a G minor chord right here, and then what I ended up doing is I made it a 7th chord by adding this F right here, just so it sounds a bit bigger. And then all I did was, if you look at this bottom note, there's a G right here, and so I just duplicated that over, and this just makes the chord sound a lot bigger. If I take these two out, bring them back in. Then all I did was I grabbed this right here, pulled it over, and this is just a super awesome trick. If I just drop this down 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it just always sounds good. And you can also bring it up 5 and it'll sound good as well. And then these top little notes right here, basically what I'm doing is I'm leading into the next chord. That's why I kind of put them here. And it also adds a bit of rhythm. Then what I did after this was I basically dragged this over right here and just moved it up a few. And I just looked for where it was lining up the most with this chord right here. And so I found that, okay, a lot of these notes seem to be lining up, not all of them. And so then all I did was I grabbed the notes that weren't lining up. This G right here, moved it up to an A, and then this D sharp I just moved it down to D right here. And then I just knew it would sound good because there's so many similar chords. And if I look way down here, this F is lining up with this other F right here. And then for the last chord right here, all I did was the same trick I used at the beginning and just dropped this down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then at the end, I added a little change. So the difference between this and this right here is just the positioning. And it just adds a kind of a cool, more natural, kind of real feel. This G right here kind of just closes everything. The next sound I added is just this caravan bell from the kit. I just wanted to add a little bit of rhythm. I just traced the top note on each chord right here. Just ignore that, that's a different note. And keep in mind, this is going to sound a little bit different in a second when I add the effects. I just want to give you an overview of this creation and then really go into the details of the effects. And so you're just not blindly like throwing on effects. 'Cause I know I used to do that all the time. I would just see someone use an effect and I'm like, all right, I need this in. Next sound I've got is this Doja guitar from the kit. And so with this, my logic kind of behind this, I kind of just went down, following notes that were in each of the chords, and then I kind of went up, and then I went back down again. And then just keeping a constant rhythm throughout. Like right here, if you look, the rhythm is about the same. Right here, even though I'm playing different notes, and then I just add a note at the end to kind of just close everything. It doesn't sound that great right now, to be honest, but it will. Next thing I added was this flute, and I just added it to the exact same parts as the guitar. And this is kind of added as more like a texture, as it's a very unique sounding flute. You probably just hear something in the background. Sounds very weird. Again, we're gonna throw some effects on in a second. Presets I like in arcade for these types of beats is Brainwaves is pretty good. This lead one is kind of cool. Honey is really good. Jukebox vocals, it's alright. I haven't found tons of stuff I like in here. This one, Sazone, I don't know if I'm saying that right. Distant Voices is nice. 70s sometimes has some cool sounds. Full Coder. Vintage Synths is a good one. Raw Takes is cool. The Crate. Chopped is nice. Yeah, you can pretty much choose most of these and you'll find something good. Then the last sound that I added was just this kind of texture from arcade. Here's how this sounds, and I'm just using a matter of perspective. So the first effect that I like for these types of beats is RC20. Everyone probably knows what RC20 is, but it really is just perfect for these types of beats. It adds a lot of color and texture. My favorite presets within here are just like the vinyl and the VHS. So here's how this sounds with RC20. Way better. Take it off. Another great plugin I like is Thermal. They've got a lot of really great presets for vocals, guitars, and keys. I'm just using this Miracle Tone one right here. Then another plugin that I like is Fresh Air. It just kind of opens everything up. And I just put a little bit on here, as you can see, barely any. You don't want too many highs in these types of beats. You cut out some of the lows, cut out some of the highs. I didn't want it to sound too full, and so I took out this little frequency right here. Off, no effects. Now with effects. So next we got this bell sound right here. This, I just used RC20 again. And then another plugin I really like, it's called Decimwort. And this is just a bit crusher, and it definitely helps make your sound like more vintage. And yeah, more vintage, I don't know what else to say. It just makes it sound older. So next for the guitar, I used some Valhalla Vintage Verb. Then the only other thing I added was some micro shift and also took out some highs. And micro shift is just a chorus, so it just makes it sound a bit bigger and wider. The last sound I have is just that flute. Didn't really do any effects, just got some highs here. Then we have arcade, no effects as well. So now to actually sample it, we're just going to take our pattern right here and just select all, Control Alt C, turn it into an audio file, then go open up Fruity Slicer and just drag this in. Then all you're going to do is go here, click on this blade, click to beat, so it's cutting on the beat, turn up the attack a little bit, and the decay. This is going to keep you from having like a popping noise. So you could even just leave it like this if you wanted to. This is probably going to sound pretty sampled. But, you know, that'd be kind of boring, so we're not going to do that. So here's the sample I ended up just coming up with. So you want it to be very repetitive. I usually have it almost exactly the same for like the first 2 bars. And then at the end, I'll usually kind of just change it up by like just changing one note. So that's what I ended up doing here. You can also go and play with the time shift. If you want more like details on sampling specifically, I did do a sampling master class a few weeks ago, and I'll have that on the end screen of this video, but I would just make sure to keep watching right now as I'm just about to get into the good stuff. Alright, so now on to drums, and drums are really the biggest key to a modern boom bap type beat, as if I did trap drums here, it would just sound like some sort of like weird trap beat. If I did EDM drums, it would sound like a weird EDM beat. Today I'm going to be using my 8-bit drum kit, which is just packed with a tons of real sounding drums, and there's also a few real sounding bass lines that we're going to use as well. But yeah, like you want drums that sound like this. Like real, kind of vintagey sounding. You want it to really boom. You don't want it to be quiet and in the background. You want your snare to really be driving through the beat, as it's the most consistent part of your beat. Then we got a kick. It's something like this, really simple. Place it right here, and feel free to just copy this exact drum pattern that I'm doing. This is a pretty common one. You want a nice thumping kick, right? There we go. So crank it all the way up on the velocity. Then a nice little open hat. Right here's a perfect spot. There we go. Throw in some hi-hats. Nice real sounding one. Add a little pause where this open hat is playing right here. So it's just hitting everywhere. Let's randomize these velocities. Make it sound a little bit more real. And then another thing I want to add to these hats is I want to add some swing, just so they don't sound so, you know, like robotic. You can just use the shift thing, which I'm going to use right here. So let's play this. There we go. Sounds a lot more real than. And what that's doing is it's just slightly shifting over the hi-hats. A good thing to add is something to kind of close off the loop. So I'm just going to listen through and see where I can add something. Maybe add like an extra kick at the end or like a snare or something like that. Let's try it here. Another thing you can do is maybe add like an additional hi-hat or something right here. Something like that works fine, especially since this is a tutorial. And this is just the bass from the 8-bit drum kit. Just like a real sounding bass line, which is what you need for these types of beats. And since I created the sample, it's kind of easy to figure out which notes are going to sound good. As every 4 beats right here, so 1, 2, 3, and then all the way up to 4, this would all have the root note of G. This right here would have the root note as G as well, as this is just 3. And then this 7 and 8 would have the root note of D right here. And then we can kind of just repeat that. So let's just try that out. Let's move this up, because I know this one, I believe, is part of this chord right here. So let's try an F. There we go. So for that last F really quickly, since this is a 9 beat, which falls in this quadrant, I knew that it was an F right here. I'm just gonna listen through really quickly, and then I'm gonna do a cool little drum effect. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select all of these drums right here, and then go to route to this track only, and then I'm just gonna add a little bit of reverb, and it's gonna give it a really cool sound. You can add other effects here if you want, but I'm just gonna add reverb, and let's just use fruity reverb because I know everyone has that. Drummer preset. First key is with your intro. When it comes to these types of beats, you really want to make something that's going to grab the listener's attention, as the intro is really going to be what gets someone to either keep listening or stop listening. Just think of how many songs that you just quickly skipped and went next to on like Spotify or something like that, just because the intro just didn't sound very interesting to you. For the intro for this beat, I actually have a little bit more going on for the first 4 bars, and then I take out a few notes and add in a bass line just to take a little bit of energy away before it actually drops into the chorus right here. Then add a little pause right here. Now next you can either do a chorus or go into a verse. Personally, I like to do a chorus just because that's kind of like the key of the song and what oftentimes people are really going to be listening to a song for. Now for the chorus, what I ended up doing, I have everything playing along with like the chopped up sample, and to add a little bit of variation for the second half of the sample, what I ended up doing was just turning this into an audio file and then moving it up an octave and turning the volume down so you can just barely hear it, but it sounds a bit louder and you hear some more brighter tones with it. The other thing I did was I did like a little drum pause midway through the chorus. Next, we have the verse, and the keys for verses is you kind of want to take everything away and then slowly build it back up leading into the chorus. Then for the verse, what I ended up doing is I wanted to take a lot of energy away. And one great way to do that is just removing this hi-hat. So I remove the hi-hat right here, and I have just barely anything playing. This snare right here, this open hi-hat, and then this kind of texture from Arcade is playing as well. Then as you'll see, as this verse progresses, I add more and more sounds, and then at the end, take out some energy right before the chorus drops in again. And then all I did at the end was I ended up just kind of copying everything over. And I always like to vary the second verse a little bit, so I just took out open hat and snare at this part right here, and it just ended up sounding really nice. Provides a nice little break for the beat. And then all I'm going to do for the outro is just grab all of these sounds right here from the original sample. Yeah, so thank you guys for watching. I hope you learned a lot. And yeah, follow me on Instagram, and I will see you soon. Peace.